Hey, love. So, I want to talk about how much this experience, this way of living, requires us to be able to adapt and be able to shift and be able to go with the ebbs and the flow. So, trying to think, just about 2 years ago, when Justin and I started walking this land, what we call visioning this land, and what wanted to be here, what we wanted to create here, and what wanted to be co-created here. We said we wanted this place to be where we built. This was where we planned on building our home. It's hard to tell here in the camera, but this is like this little valley, this knoll, up into the mountain. And so it just felt like we could create a little earthen home that would be perfect to fit in here. And then you can see where we've cut things out over here. This was gonna be garden area, and we've got this pretty view of the mountaintop of East River Mountain, actually, which is exactly, you can't see it in the video, but I can see it with the eye, the tower, and the house is over there. And this is a place that means a great deal to me, and really means a great deal to both of us. This overlook of our town that we have spent hours and hours and hours sitting at. This place has been a safe haven for me, a place where I could just go breathe and relax and get a higher view and a higher perspective. And so it was just really funny that we were in line with that. It's hard to see right now too with the brush and the trees, but actually in front of us right here is an old logging road, and it does like this loop-de-loop to the road that we'd been working on getting in. And so it was like we could have this loop driveway, and we could see a little shed over there, that little tent is. And anyway, had this whole vision for this space. And as far as we knew, from surveys that had been done through family generations, this was our land, and so we were able to build here. And when we got up here, we started having land disputes with the neighbor and all that jazz. And so eventually we just decided, you know what, we're just spinning circles and not getting anywhere. So we will honor that. So what that did is, this is our property. 5 feet from it is their property. And we can't build directly on top. So we decided that we would build somewhere else. So there wasn't any questioning of it. We didn't want to potentially build on someone else's. We didn't want to have to go through 5 surveys and court visits and all that stuff over this. That kind of started sucking the joy out of it. But so we had to shift. And when we decided to shift, that also looked like building differently. A couple things too is we came out here with the plan of doing an earthship. We had researched a lot of earthships after a friend Angie had planted that seed for us a handful of years ago. If you don't know what an earthship is, check it out. I'll leave a link hopefully to Earthship Biotexture down below. But a little earthing home. And then when we got out here, we kind of realized, so this land had been timbered 20 years ago. So we do not have a whole great deal of big timber trees. We have all these little tiny 20-year-old poplars. That right there is about the biggest thing we've got, other than a few oaks. And we started looking at too, all right, when we're talking about holistic sustainability, when we're talking about being conscious and being aware of where we're spending our time, our energy, our money, our efforts, what did hauling in tires for an earthship look like, right? And so we started paying more attention about what resources are we already abundant with? What resources do we have here so we can stay connected to the land? and use what we have in these trees. So we started researching cordwood homes, which are super cool, and we really love the concept. We could use every single item that we had to cut down essentially to get in here to build our home with. And it has a few little steps, like they've got to dry out, we've got to clear off the bark, but other than that, like, you're just using 16-inch 18-inch logs and some clay mortar or whatnot to build. So we decided we were going to do that and do that here. And then, right, like the whole land dispute. So we had to shift again. And we started looking at, all right, well, if this isn't going to be the spot, if this can't be the spot, then where's the spot? And we walked all over looking at places and seeing what was shown to us, where the land seemed like it was inviting us to live. And we found a good couple spots, but we ultimately settled here. And the funny thing with this is this little this little Charlie Brown pine tree. It's like one of 5 pine trees on the entire property. And we had joked about, like, when we were going to be up there, that our Christmas tree would be in front of us so we could decorate it each year. And we really like the idea of, like, later down the road, the roundabout driveway, right? And our view of that mountaintop that meant so much. So we decided to go here. And so it's not too far from that area there, just a little around the ways. We still get the roundabout, we still get our Christmas tree, still get a view. Might have to do some trimming back there. But that meant we were more on a hillside, as you'll notice here. And it took us away from a little more privacy, being tucked up. As you'll notice, down below is the main road, and that's where our home site is at the moment. And we have plans for that flat space to be a designated parking area. So when we have friends, family over, whatnot, there's some extra space. And some other plans for down the road. We'll see if they'll come in. But so one thing is we knew this took some privacy away. But what we decided to do was build the back of our house here and the front of our house here, this wraparound driveway area. And then that way our Christmas tree's still in our front like we had planned. Because of the way we're going to build, we'll still be able to have the view in the back of the house. And then we can still use that space that called to us so much. We can still use that space for gardening. We can make it be our hangout space. We can have a fire pit, a pergola, whatever we want there, and get that in the smaller space than that the property line allows for. And everybody will be happy. And we don't have to do the whole court thing. We don't have to do the whole battle thing and all that. So, flow, right? Like, we had to enter flow. Well, we decided we were going to do cordwood, right? And then, obviously, this doesn't look like a cordwood foundation. Some things we started looking at were okay, it's June, July, and winter is coming, right? Like, we live in an environment where there's a lot of snow and it's cold for several months. So winter's coming. So we knew we needed to get some sort of shelter in place. So our first plans, when it came to building the earthship, when it even came to the cordwood, our plan was to build some sort of insulated shed on the property, somewhere over there or somewhere down there, and live in the shed this winter and have that as a backup as we built, and then be able to use the shed for storage later. But when we started looking at time, when we started looking at expenses and finances and all these things, we were kind of put in the place of choosing, like, all right, in order to get this done, we're gonna have to like spend some, right? There might have to be some debt created and all that jazz. And so is it worth it to put that time, effort, energy, finances into a temporary solution or into a more permanent solution? So essentially we were just kind of like ready. Like, we just want to have our home, right? We're tired of like moving between spaces and all that jazz. Right? We're tired of flow. No, we're willing to flow, but like, we're ready for roots. We're ready to get something anchored in here. So when we decided that, that really created a space where we had to super be willing to shift and to look at things in a different way. So cordwood was going to take a few years. Earthing, or what's that? Earthship was the concept. The concept and the system structure of an earthship is what I really loved. It was like a circulatory system, like this whole body system where each piece had an intention and filled the next one, and it just really felt to line there. But the build of an earthship is essentially wasn't something we wanted to do, like pounding mud and tires for days on end. So we started doing research, and we learned that we could use pallets, right? So we were like, all right, we're going to do a pallet house that's still recycled, that still reduces materials. We've been getting them for free. We've been working with pallets a lot. So we're going to do a pallet home. All right, well, how are we going to do that? Because our earthen foundation went to this elevated foundation. So we started looking at 6x6 beams and all this stuff, and we're like, financially, that's not going to get us all the way through. So, and one thing we didn't want to do was have to dig into the ground a lot too. There's a lot of energy that goes into that, digging into the ground without heavy machinery. So we found these concepts of, it's common in Nova Scotia, it's common in Alaska, in places where there's a lot of wetness, in places there's a lot of snow, in places that there's a lot of clay, in what's called a floating foundation. And that means that your foundation is built above and not built below. So we started looking into that concept, and we're like, let's go that route. And so anyway, that shift and changed our whole concept here. And even at this point now, like that you're looking at this, even at this point now, we're sitting here like, we might not be able to do pallets, and we might have to do straw bale. Just depending on a couple things. We might be able to do straw clay in the pallets, or we might have to go full bale, just in order to get something warm, because even the R value of insulation that we're needing is not something that we can like afford. And I always laugh because somehow we always start out with this like reduce, reuse, recycle, eco-friendly build. And then other people come in and like give us ideas and concepts and whatnot. And we start feeling like we're crunched for time. So we start looking at modern materials. And when we start looking at modern materials, we're like, can't quite afford that to do all the things, to not settle on something, to not give something up, right? And to make sure that the systems for our house align with off-grid, so that we can stay warm, so that we have a place for our waste, so that all the properties of the circulatory system work. And so every time that happens, we're shifted back into natural building ways. So it's really funny just how like we can swing almost like we're getting out of it a little bit and more into modern building, and then all of a sudden something will happen and it shifts us right back into this more sustainable way of building. And so we're constantly having to shift. My dad even jokes and says like, what's the new plan? Because every time he comes over, there's a new plan. But I'm a big person, and you know, this isn't necessarily Justin's forte. He's getting more on board with it as years have gone by. But I'm a big person. When I used to do furniture, when I create anything, it's like it will tell you what it wants to be. When we try to tell it what it wants to be, that's when we start getting into trouble. That's when things don't start lining up. So this house, it's constantly unfolding. It's telling us what it wants to be. It's telling us what materials it wants to use. And we have to be able to be willing and then to adapt and shift with that every single layer. So like even from these stone foundations to the railroad ties, being able to shift and adapt. So I just wanted to kind of plant that there. And, you know, whether or not you're living this type of life, whether or not this is something you want to strive for, or whether or not this may even be uploaded on my Hillwood LG channel, my Reiki channel, when we're talking about life force energy, like even if you're just wanting to live a more conscious life, it's realizing that things have seasons and being able to flow, and realizing that things that we create are living and breathing and they have layers. And so we might make a plan, and then that space may tell us that that plan's going to look different. And you know, it's up to us whether or not we want to flow with it, or up to us as to maybe we don't want to flow with it and we want to push through and we still want to do the plan. Either way, we're going to have to adapt. Yeah, but learning to be able to shift and make those choices based off our own discernment and what our heart really wants is important. So loves, I'm not sure that I have any pictures or anything to like show all that craziness there, all that shifting. If I do, it will be at the end of the video here in just a second. And otherwise, I appreciate you showing up. Let me know what you think, and I'll catch you next time.